Stellantis has just dropped a bombshell on the entire auto industry, and it's sending shockwaves through dealerships, competitors, and even loyal customers. We're talking about discounts so massive, so aggressive, that it almost sounds unreal, up to 60% off on select models. This isn't just a seasonal clearance or a small incentive to move some old inventory. This is Stellantis going all in, slashing prices in ways we haven't seen from a major automaker in years, and it's changing the entire game for the U.S. car market. Think about what this means for buyers. Trucks, SUVs, and sedans that were once out of reach are suddenly affordable to everyday families. A vehicle that might have cost $50,000 just a year ago could now be in the driveway for nearly half that price. For customers who've been sitting on the sidelines, waiting for the right time to buy, Stellantis just opened the floodgates. But behind these jaw-dropping deals, there's a much bigger story, because automakers don't give away profit like this unless something serious is happening. The truth is, Stellantis has been sitting on mountains of unsold inventory. Their lots are overflowing with Rams, Jeeps, and Dodges that simply aren't moving at the pace they expected. Rising interest rates, stubborn inflation, and cautious consumers have created the perfect storm. Instead of letting vehicles pile up and lose value, Stellantis is cutting deeper than anyone else, even if it means torching their profit margins. They're betting big on volume. Move as many vehicles as possible, dominate market share, and leave rivals scrambling to keep up. This strategy is already putting massive pressure on Ford and GM. How do you compete when your biggest rival is practically giving trucks away? Dealers across the country are sounding the alarm, because if Stellantis can maintain these discounts for long enough, it could reshape customer loyalty in ways that no marketing campaign ever could. Imagine being a Ford or Chevy fan your whole life, but suddenly you see a Ram 1500 for tens of thousands less. That kind of price difference forces people to think twice, and Stellantis knows it. But the question is, can they sustain it? Because discounts this steep are a double-edged sword. Sure, they'll drive people into showrooms in droves, but what happens to brand perception when your vehicles are selling for nearly half price? Will customers ever be willing to pay full sticker again? Or has Stellantis permanently changed the value expectation for their vehicles, locking themselves into a dangerous cycle of discounts? And here's where things get even more explosive, because beneath the excitement of these once-in-a-lifetime deals, there's a looming risk that Stellantis might be playing a dangerous long game. Automakers thrive on balance, balancing inventory, pricing, and consumer trust. When one of those pillars collapses, the whole structure shakes. Right now, Stellantis is essentially signaling to the market, we'll do whatever it takes to clear our lots. That kind of desperation doesn't just attract buyers. It attracts attention from Wall Street, industry analysts, and, most importantly, competitors who smell blood in the water. Ford and GM can't ignore this. If Stellantis continues with these slashing tactics, they'll be forced to respond. That means more rebates, lower financing rates, and possibly their own massive discounts just to stay competitive. But here's the catch. Once every automaker starts a price war, nobody wins. Profits vanish, brand value erodes, and the market spirals into chaos. We've seen this before in other industries, airlines, retail, even smartphones, and it never ends cleanly. At the same time, Stellantis dealers are dealing with a double-edged sword of their own. Yes, they're finally moving metal off their lots, but they're also watching commissions shrink and used car values plummet. Imagine being a customer who bought a Jeep or Ram last year at full price, only to see the same model going for nearly half today. The frustration is real, and it's sparking anger among loyalists who feel betrayed. For Stellantis, this isn't just about clearing out inventory. It's about managing the fallout of what comes next. And here's where the bigger picture comes into play, because this isn't just about Stellantis versus Ford or GM. This has ripple effects across the entire auto industry, including foreign automakers. Toyota, Honda, and even Hyundai are suddenly staring down a pricing nightmare. Their strategy has always been built on reliability, quality, and steady demand. But when Stellantis is practically handing out trucks and SUVs at bargain bin prices, even the strongest brands risk losing foot traffic. Shoppers who would have walked into a Toyota dealership without hesitation are now thinking, why pay $40,000 for this SUV when Stellantis is offering a comparable one for $25,000? That kind of shift can cause long-term damage to competitors' sales pipelines. Financing companies and lenders are also on edge. Discounting vehicles so aggressively means resale values collapse faster. Banks hate that because it increases the risk of loans going underwater. Customers who finance a vehicle today might owe more than the car is worth tomorrow if prices keep free-falling. This undermines the entire auto financing system and could cause ripple effects far beyond Stellantis itself. It could hit leasing programs, insurance valuations, and even the broader used car market, where prices are already starting to soften after years of skyrocketing highs. Meanwhile, Stellantis is presenting this as a win for the consumer. And to be fair, in the short term, it absolutely is. Families who thought they'd never afford a new truck now can. Contractors can upgrade fleets at a fraction of the cost. Everyday drivers are finally catching a break after years of inflated prices. But the question nobody wants to answer is this. If Stellantis breaks the pricing floor, how far will this race to the bottom really go? And the truth is, once that floor cracks, there's no easy way to rebuild it. Automakers have spent decades carefully inflating prices, layering in features, packages, and trim levels to justify higher MSRPs. But Stellantis just ripped the rug out from under that system. If consumers get used to the idea that a $60,000 truck can suddenly be had for $30,000 or less, the entire pricing model of the auto industry could collapse. Buyers will start waiting for the big sale, holding off on purchases because they know that discounts will eventually come. That kind of consumer psychology can destroy long-term profitability. What's even more concerning is how this ties into Stellantis' global strategy. Remember, Stellantis isn't just Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and Chrysler. This is a massive multinational company that includes brands like Peugeot, Citroën, Fiat, Alfa Romeo, and more. If they normalize extreme discounting in the US, it could bleed into Europe and other markets where competition is already fierce. We could be looking at a global domino effect, where price wars ripple across continents and shake entire economies tied to auto manufacturing. And behind all of this is the very real pressure of the electric vehicle transition. Stellantis is lagging behind Tesla, Ford, and even Hyundai in the EV arms race. By slashing prices on their gas-powered lineup, they might be buying themselves time, moving old inventory to fund their EV development. But that's a dangerous gamble. If their EVs don't land with the same shock factor, Stellantis could find itself with no clear identity. Too cheap to be premium, too late to dominate EVs, and too dependent on discounts to survive without them. The industry knows this, Wall Street knows this, and competitors are watching closely, which is why this moment feels less like a bold strategy and more like a high-stakes gamble. Stellantis is effectively daring the rest of the industry to follow them into the fire. Either Ford, GM, and Toyota match these discounts and risk burning billions in profits, or they hold their ground and watch Stellantis scoop up desperate buyers who can't resist the deals. Neither option is safe, and that's what makes this move so explosive. Behind closed doors, dealership owners are split. Some are thrilled to finally see inventory move, while others worry they're torching brand equity that took decades to build. Once a brand becomes associated with cheap pricing, climbing back to premium status is nearly impossible. We've seen it with brands like Mitsubishi, where endless discounting turned once respected models into bargain bin afterthoughts. Stellantis runs the risk of pushing Ram, Jeep, and Dodge down that same slippery slope. And yet, in the short term, this aggressive play is working. Showrooms that were empty months ago are buzzing again. Ads plastered with 60% OFF are pulling customers in by the thousands. Social media is flooded with people bragging about snagging deals that seemed unthinkable just a year ago. For Stellantis, this is the payoff they wanted. An instant surge in market attention, viral buzz, and headlines declaring they've just blown the doors off the competition. But momentum like this never lasts forever, and the cracks are already starting to show. Cracks that are becoming harder to ignore. For starters, used car owners who bought Stellantis vehicles just months ago are furious. Their trade-in values have tanked overnight, leaving many of them upside down on their loans. Dealerships are reporting waves of angry calls from customers who feel cheated, demanding to know why their $55,000 truck is suddenly worth barely $30,000. That resentment can turn to long-term damage, souring loyalty and driving people away from Stellantis even after the discounts are gone. At the same time, suppliers and workers are feeling the pressure. Stellantis can't keep slashing prices without cutting costs somewhere else. and that usually means squeezing part suppliers or scaling back labor expenses. If that happens, the ripple effect could hit thousands of jobs across North America and Europe. Auto towns that depend on Stellantis plants are already on edge, because if profit margins collapse, those factories could face slowdowns, temporary layoffs, or even permanent closures. Meanwhile, Wall Street analysts are growing skeptical. Sure, big sales spikes look great in the short term, but investors want sustainable growth, not flash-in-the-pan gimmicks. If Stellantis can't show a clear path to profitability while slashing prices so aggressively, confidence in the company's future could erode fast. Stockholders don't want to see fire sale tactics. They want innovation, stability, and leadership in the EV race. And right now, Stellantis is gambling that they can have it both ways. Massive discounts today and market dominance tomorrow. But history tells us that these kinds of deep discount strategies rarely end cleanly. Look back at automakers during the 2008 financial crisis. Brands that leaned too heavily on giveaways and unsustainable incentives often dug themselves into holes they couldn't climb out of. Pontiac, Saturn, Hummer, names that once carried weight, collapsed in part because fire sales eroded their value to the point of no return. Stellantis is walking dangerously close to that same edge. Only this time the stakes are even higher because the competition isn't just traditional automakers. It's Tesla and the wave of EV startups rewriting the rules. And here's the twist. Stellantis isn't just fighting to keep buyers. It's fighting to stay relevant in a world that's shifting away from gas-powered dominance. Slashing prices may clear out Ram trucks and Dodge SUVs today, but tomorrow's battleground is electric. Every dollar lost on discounts is a dollar they could have poured into battery tech, charging networks, or competitive EV models. If Ford's F-150 Lightning or Tesla Cybertruck keep gaining traction, Stellantis could find itself with empty lots of old stock but still lagging in the very market that defines the future. Consumers, though, don't care about long-term strategy. They care about value right now. And that's exactly why Stellantis' move is both brilliant and dangerous. Brilliant because it captures attention in a way no ad campaign could. Dangerous because it could trap them in a cycle where the only way to keep customers interested is to keep slashing deeper. Once buyers are trained to expect massive discounts, full-price sales become nearly impossible. And as rivals start calculating their next move, the pressure cooker intensifies. Ford and GM executives are holding emergency meetings with their dealer networks, trying to figure out how to respond without completely gutting their own profit margins. Toyota and Honda, usually immune to these types of price wars thanks to their reputation for reliability, are suddenly in uncharted waters. They know if they sit back, Stellantis could steal a wave of budget-conscious buyers who might never come back. But if they slash prices too, they risk unraveling decades of carefully built brand prestige. And the consumer psychology here is shifting fast. Buyers who once accepted inflated MSRPs and high monthly payments are realizing they don't have to. The Stellantis discounts are sending a loud message. These vehicles were overpriced all along. That realization doesn't just affect Stellantis, it taints the entire industry. Why pay $50,000 for a Chevy Silverado when Stellantis is practically begging you to take home a Ram for nearly half? Why sign a lease at premium rates when you know the right discount could slash the cost in half? Once that seed of doubt is planted, it's nearly impossible to unroot. Dealers are also caught in a tug-of-war. On one hand, the flood of customers chasing these discounts is a short-term goldmine. Showrooms are busy, and cars are finally leaving lots. On the other, every sale at a 60% discount is a hit to long-term profitability, with smaller commissions and lower margins that make sustaining dealership operations harder. Some insiders are already whispering that if Stellantis keeps this up, dealership closures could become inevitable in smaller markets. And this brings us to the darker side of the story. The darker side that Stellantis doesn't want anyone talking about. Because behind the flashy headlines and giant red banners screaming 60% OFF, there's a storm brewing that could devastate the backbone of the auto industry. When prices collapse this hard, it doesn't just hurt the competition. It destabilizes the used car market, it rattles lenders, and it leaves current owners with vehicles worth far less than what they owe. That's a recipe for a surge in loan defaults, repossessions, and financial pain that spreads far beyond Stellantis showrooms. And think about what this means for the workers who build these vehicles. Stellantis plants are some of the largest employers in their regions. If discounts slash profitability to unsustainable levels, layoffs or production cuts won't just be rumors, they'll be reality. Communities that depend on those jobs could be left scrambling, turning what looks like a win for buyers today into a ticking time bomb for local economies tomorrow. At the same time, whispers are already circulating that Stellantis may not even care about long-term stability in the U.S. market. Some analysts believe this fire sale strategy is about one thing: grabbing market share quickly, juicing short-term sales numbers, and showing investors a spike that distract from deeper problems, like lagging EV development and inconsistent global strategy. If that's true, then this whole discount war isn't about helping consumers, it's about survival. And if it is about survival, then Stellantis may be signaling that it sees the U.S. market as a battlefield it cannot afford to lose. Think about it. America is truck country. Ram is one of Stellantis' crown jewels, competing directly with Ford's F-Series and Chevy's Silverado, two of the most profitable vehicles in the entire industry. If Ram trucks stop selling, Stellantis doesn't just take a hit, they risk losing their identity. That's why the discounts are so steep. It's not generosity, it's desperation to protect the one segment keeping them relevant. But survival tactics like this often come with collateral damage. Already, smaller automakers and startups are being squeezed out. EV newcomers trying to establish themselves can't match a 60% discount without going bankrupt. Even legacy brands that don't rely on trucks, like Nissan or Mazda, are suddenly in trouble because buyers who might have considered them are now drawn to Stellantis' bargain prices. This creates a ripple effect, distorting the entire industry's balance and forcing companies to fight battles they never expected. Meanwhile, consumers are growing more aware of the game being played. The internet is flooded with posts exposing the real cost of vehicles, pointing out how these massive discounts prove that sticker prices were bloated to begin with. That awareness doesn't fade. It shifts the entire narrative of car buying, transforming buyers into bargain hunters who no longer accept MSRP as reality. Once consumers adapt to that mindset, automakers everywhere are trapped in a cycle of chasing sales with discounts instead of innovation. And the really shocking part is that Stellantis may have set off a chain reaction it can't control. By detonating these 60% discounts, they've changed consumer expectations, rattled competitors, and thrown the entire U.S. auto market into uncharted territory. What started as a short-term strategy to clear bloated inventory could spiral into an industry-wide price war that burns profits, devalues brands, and leaves the entire market weaker than before. For now, buyers are celebrating. Families are finally driving home in trucks and SUVs they thought were out of reach. Showrooms are packed, headlines are buzzing, and Stellantis looks like the bold rebel that forced the industry's hand. But behind that celebration lies a dangerous truth. You can't play with fire forever without getting burned. If Stellantis can pivot from this chaos into a sustainable EV strategy and rebuild its brand around more than just bargain bin pricing, this gamble might just pay off. But if they can't, history may remember these 60% discounts not as a brilliant move, but as the moment Stellantis lit the fuse on its own downfall. Because in the end, one thing is certain: the auto industry will never look the same again. And if you want to stay ahead of every twist and turn in this unfolding story, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now, because this is only the beginning.